Let's continue talking about the road bond and see how early voting turned out. Early voting is over and done with. The election now set for Saturday on the road bond. And we'll head down to the Secretary of State's office, where Don Kersey is director of the Elections Division, also the deputy legal counsel for the office. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you this morning?
I'm well, sir. How are you today?
Good. Appreciate you taking time to join us this morning. Have you guys got the final totals in yet on early voting? How good, bad, or indifferent was it?
We do. As of this morning at 8:30 a.m., we have 37,534 early votes and absentee ballots cast.
That's the total of early and absentee?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you done the math? What does that work out to in terms of percentage? Do you know?
It's pretty low.
Yeah.
You're about 3%.
Yeah. What is there a trend we have early voting turnout? And again, this is a weird election, so it's kind of hard to talk about trends. How does early voting pace with the overall voting when we're done? Is it traditionally, at least? Do you have a sense of that?
Traditionally, it really varies on what's at stake in the election. If you have candidates on the ballot, it seems like your election day turnout is usually much greater than an election that's held on a Saturday without a candidate on the ballot. So we anticipate lower numbers than, if this was a federal election, so to speak.
Traditionally, I think of Election Day as the Tuesday Election Day. And when I talk to people about elections, generally, most people say, oh, yeah, I vote on Election Day. And early voting is the really committed folks or the people who, think about it ahead of time. My sense in talking to people this year was most people who said they were going to go vote were thinking about early voting because Saturday just seems like such a weird day for them.
Yeah, you're right. When you have a Saturday election, especially during football season, it's not something that folks put at the top of their to-do list. So I think you're right. We heard the same sorts of things around the Secretary of State's office with early voting. Those who were interested, it seemed like they were out early.
What kinds of feedback have you gotten, or has the office gotten from the individual counties in terms of what kind of response they're getting? Are people excited about this? I know I voted early 2 days ago, I guess. I was the only person in the polling place. I talked to some of the poll workers, and they were, quite frankly, a bit discouraged by the turnout.
We haven't heard too much talk like that, but of the little bit we have heard, I think you're right. I think that the poll workers and the county clerks are maybe not discouraged, but maybe a little disappointed in the turnout because, you want to see more folks come out to vote, especially on a statewide issue that affects every citizen in the state.
Yeah, and maybe disappointed is a better word than discouraged, but I know that I sense frustration that, again, I said, well, I walked in and I made a joke. I said, how long do I have to wait? And they said, step right up to the plate.
You're on.
You're on deck, But it is scary to me. This is a really critical election, whether you're supported or opposed to it. This is a really critical election for the state, and to have such a low turnout, at least in early voting, essentially around 3%. That's a frightening number to look at.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is a pretty low number to say that 3% of our population is going to have, the ultimate say as to whether or not we're going to pass this constitutional amendment is, that is sort of a scary ideal. But we still have Election Day, and I know we're on the radio a couple times a day, and there are a lot of issue advocacy campaigns out there that I've heard and seen on TV and in the newspapers, so I'm hopeful that we'll have a good turnout on Election Day.
Everything is all set and ready to roll for Election Day?
Oh, yeah. The county clerks, they've been getting ready for this for months. They've done a really great job, and I'm really happy to report that we haven't had one single complaint over the last 10 days from anyone anywhere in the state about anything that any county clerk has done. So they've done a really great job getting ready for this thing, and on such short notice. If you remember, we didn't really have a date for the election until June. So the county clerks put this thing together really quickly on top of everything else they're doing in their offices. So hats off to them.
Yeah, that's good. Usually, there's at least a few complaints. Sometimes they're even frivolous, but at least usually there's a few
Yeah.
there's a few complaints that come in. So that's actually good. But again, with so few people going, I guess what is there to complain about? For people, if anybody does have complaints come election day, or they see things they're nervous about, they should report to their county clerk. There's the Secretary of State's office going to have hotline available, that kind of thing. I know we're not anticipating it, but what happens if people do have concerns come election day?
All the above. Exactly what you said. Contact your county clerk, tell a poll worker, or you can call the Secretary of State's office. We do have a hotline. We also have the main line, which is 558-6000. You can contact me, Donald Kersey, or our General Counsel, Stephen Connolly. We have investigators that are on call throughout the state for this entire election. So if there's any issues that don't need to be addressed immediately, you can contact us. Now, if there's an issue where in a polling place or around a precinct there's something that is dangerous or might be dangerous, you'll want to contact your local authorities. So just call 911 and have them take care of it, because they'll be the quickest first responders. But for any kind of suspicious activity or concerns or complaints you might have, go ahead and contact your county clerk or our office, and we'll take care of those.
Now, I have a dumb question, because I've seen a couple of people who went to vote and took pictures of themselves in or around the polling place. Is that actually permissible?
You know, the code is not really clear on whether or not you can have a cell phone in an election room. The code is clear that you can't take a photo in the voting booth itself with your ballot. But the code really isn't written to where one can make a determination whether or not it's okay to have a cell phone in the room itself where voting is going on.
So if you're standing in front of the polling table and you just take a quick selfie of yourself in the room, so to speak, you're probably okay with that. Because I've seen some of those posted on Facebook, and I wondered about it at the time. But you're probably okay with something like that, just not in the actual polling booth itself.
Right. Yeah, you're probably okay, although I would advise against it just because it raises questions, just like you're talking about now. Even when you talk about something that could be a concern, people lose a little bit of confidence or they get suspicious. And, my rule of thumb is even if something gives the appearance of impropriety, just don't do it.
Yeah, well, you're right. That's the simplest thing. But, again, I've seen some Facebook postings, and they're just proud voters, people going, hey, I voted today. But I wondered at the time, I don't know, I'm not sure that's exactly legal, but your best bet is just not to do it at all. Donald, I don't know if you have numbers in front of you or not. Do you have Ohio or Marshall County early voting numbers in front of you?
Yeah,
if you don't,
I sure do.
If you don't, I understand. Yeah,
I do. Let me see here. We got these this morning from our wonderful voter registration specialist, Brittany Westfall. She really does a great job. So Ohio County, you've got 1,174. That's early votes and absentee cast.
Okay.
And let's see here.
Marshall.
What else would you like to hear?
Marshall County.
Sure. 738 early votes and absentee cast.
Okay, and again, in both of those cases, that is absentee and early voting combined.
Right. So the early voting numbers, those ballots would have been done in person, early voting, and the absentee would have been folks who have already returned them to the county courthouse. So it could be the case that several more absentees come in as long as they're postmarked by Election Day.
I should know this, and I don't. Are early votes tabulated ahead of time, or do they all wait until Election Day to be counted?
They're all counted on Election Day.
They're all counted on Election Day. Okay.
Yeah.
I should have known that. All right.
That's a good question.
The polls open on Saturday at
6:30 a.m.
And they're open until what, 7:30? Yes,
sir.
All right. So Saturday is Election Day. Try and go probably vote before the WVU TCU game. You'll want to watch it on TV, so go vote before you while you're out buying your tailgating supplies.
That's right. Hop on in your precinct location and go ahead and cast your vote. It's a simple for the amendment or against the amendment question. You can be in and out real fast, I'm sure of it.
And, I sat and I reread that 2 or 3 times, only because sometimes these amendments are reversed. So I read it over and over again. Am I voting for? If I vote for, I'm in favor of the road bond. If I vote against, I'm against the road bond. And it is a pretty clear and easy to understand thing. But I actually sat and looked at that carefully before I cast my vote. Didn't want to make a mistake, Donald.
No, absolutely. I think that was a really responsible thing to do. I know that our clerks worked hard this year, and the ballot commissioners especially, who approved the language on each particular county ballot, and they wanted to make sure that the language was as clear as it could be, which the default language came from the proclamation itself. So if anybody was wondering where that language is created, it comes from the proclamation, and then the ballot commissioners ultimately in each county approve that. So, that was that was good.
And just to be clear, the amendment simply says the state is authorized to sell these bonds, right? There's no other provisions attached to it.
That is my understanding.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's certainly what I've come to believe too. So, because some folks had hoped that there would be a provision attached that you have to have state workers, or others had hoped there'd be a provision attached that referenced the taxes and so on. None of that is there. It simply says, are you essentially for authorizing the state to be able to sell these bonds? And that's what the amendment is. Donald, I appreciate your time this morning. So 37,534 total absentee and early voting across the state, 1174 in Ohio County, 738 in Marshall County. Again, combined absentee and early voting. Very good. I appreciate your time this morning. Thanks very much. I know it'll be a busy few days for you guys, and hopefully things will go without a hitch on Saturday.
Absolutely. Thank you, Howard. And if I could leave you with just one thing, if anybody is wondering where their polling place is on Election Day, just go to our website, that's WVSOS.com, and you'll see a big button right in the banner that says, "Where do I vote?" You click that button, you type in your first name, last name, and date of birth, and it'll tell you the exact address where you can cast your vote on Election Day.
That's actually a really good tool to have. Sometimes polling places get changed and people don't realize where they're supposed to go. So that's good. Is it WVSOS.com? .com?
Yes, sir. We have a .gov address as well, but they all redirect in the same place. And on election night, if you're looking for results, we're going to have a map on our website as well, and you can see real-time results as they come in after 7:30.
All right, very good. I appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you again soon, I hope. All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Howard.